A sitting head of state picks his presidency's symbol and identity. A flag designated as a presidential standard that is significant during his tenure as head of state and even after his death. Now, Kenya has seen 4 presidents of state pick their flags to symbolize their identity, with the yet-to-be sworn-in 5th Commander-in-Chief, William Ruto, expected to unveil his standard at his inauguration on Tuesday, September 13th. Leila Mohammed tells us more about this unique flag and what it represents for heads of state.
Immediately after the national anthem is played in the handover ceremony conducted by the military at Kasarani Stadium on Tuesday, September 13th, a significant action that symbolizes the handover of power will follow suit. Military police officers will stand side by side, one lowering the presidential standard of the outgoing commander-in-chief and the other raising the presidential standard of the incoming C-in-C, ushering in Kenya's 5th commander-in-chief.
At no time does the military have 2 commanders-in-chief. So every time we have a commander-in-chief is one. Secondly, the responsibility of the commander-in-chief is not delegable. You cannot delegate that responsibility to anybody else. That's why we don't even have a deputy commander-in-chief. So the head of state is the commander-in-chief and is the only one. So anytime there's a change in guard in terms of the leadership of the country, then one must be lowered, the new one is raised to mean that we have now a new commander-in-chief.
Unlike in most other countries, in Kenya the presidential standard is designed by the president-elect and thus changes with the new incumbent.
When a head of state assumes office as commander-in-chief of the defense forces of the republic, the KDF would always, once he's president-elect, like now, they would ordinarily, as part of the protocol and laid out procedures, ask him, get his opinion of how he would like his presidential standard to look. Mostly it's about the color and other, customizations.
For Kenya's founding father, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, it was a darker shade of blue that he chose for his presidential standard. And in the middle, he chose to put the 2 spears and the shield, and also paying homage to KANU, the founding party that he chose to run with when he was being declared president in 1964. For the second president who took over in 1978, Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi chose the greenness of this country and went for a green standard, and also, like his predecessor before him, put the 2 spears and the shield in the middle. But this time around, the KANU symbol of the cock was red, and he chose to go with that even up to death. For the 3rd president, Mwai Kibaki, who came into power in 2002, it was white that he chose to use as his presidential flag, probably paying homage to Mount Kenya and the skies and the beauty of this country, and also going a bit green and putting the shield in the middle and the 2 spears, and having no other symbol other than the greenness that we are seeing behind. For Uhuru Kenyatta, Kenya's president, who came into power in 2013, he chose to honor his father's legacy and go a shade lighter for the blue. And this is significant because instead of the cockerel that we saw in his father's presidential standard, he chose to put the dove, which was part of his party symbol TNA when he came to power in 2013.
The incoming commander-in-chief has been reported to have settled for a green color for his presidential standard, but not much details as to the particular shade of green or the symbols that will be placed in it have been released to the public.
Is he bound by any specific narrow colors, or he can choose from a wide array of colors?
Not necessarily. I mean, he would have he has the latitude, I think, to pick any color. But mostly, you would find most of the heads of state would want something that is not very screaming and so on. And remember, he is a head of state of the entire country. It's not about his party. These are matters of high matters of statecraft.
The first president of Kenya, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, between 1963 and 1970, initially used a flag which followed the basic design of the Kenya national flag, but with the full coat of arms on a black square in the center of the flag, instead of the shield and the spears. The idea of a standard dates back to British military tradition and management of state affairs, and as such, countries that are part of the Commonwealth, like here in Kenya, have adopted such practice over the years.
It is a symbol of power and authority. Anytime you see, if the president walks somewhere in an official ceremony and that flag is not visible, it is not raised, then whatever he says there does not represent his authority. It is like walking around with your power and authority.
It's a great honor because he's also the mouthpiece of the country's foreign policy. So he's an institution in that way, and therefore, as commander-in-chief, wherever he goes, just like you would find when he sets up a military formation, say a unit, a brigade, and that kind of thing, each brigade has got its own flag. Even in the British tradition, the king or queen would also have their own flag, and that flag is guarded jealously, is heavily guarded. It's a symbol, like if that flag goes or something happens to it, then that's sort of symbolically that authority is gone.
Once the presidential standard flies high, flapping with the wind, it means that all protocols deserving of a commander-in-chief must be observed.
If the president walks somewhere in an official ceremony and that flag is not visible, it is not raised, then whatever he says there does not represent his authority. It is like walking around with your power and authority.
In all this time, the military takes charge of ensuring its safety, guarding it and protecting it from any harm.
And that's why sometimes when you see a president walking around with the flag and what else, he goes there first in his or her individual capacity, and two, he doesn't want to make his appearance official.
The presidential standard becomes part of his identity in life and also in time of his passing.
You know, that one now is sort of giving him the highest honors.
The standard is a different flag from the presidential color. Here in Kenya, it usually shows up during national events. This special flag has unique identifiers. The presidential color follows the familiar pattern of being a golden fringed version of the national flag, with the central badge replaced by the coat of arms. It usually shows up at a parade when a unit color that identifies a military unit is being trooped and given the identity to operate independently as a battalion within the larger brigade. Leila Mohammed, NTV.